Amidst the glitter of London's high society, a 10-year-old girl silently observes the contradictions of a world where luxury abounds, but compassion is scarce. As she goes out to take food to people experiencing homelessness, she encounters a woman wearing the necklace she made for her missing grandmother. This unexpected encounter awakens a truth buried for over a year and threatens to unmask a conspiracy within her own family. But this girl's courage might be the only light capable of guiding her grandmother back home and rebuilding everything that was almost destroyed. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. We continue. I promise this will be the best story you will ever hear in your life. The ballroom of the London Humanitarian Institute gleamed with the light of 1,000 crystals. The London elite circulated among champagne flutes and canapé trays, amidst conversations about the financial market and the latest real estate launches. Henry Montgomery, one of the country's most successful businessmen, smiled contentedly as he observed the success of yet another charity event organized by his current wife, Carmen Vance Montgomery. Little Manuela Montgomery, just 10 years old, observed everything with her large brown eyes, feeling out of place in her navy blue satin dress. The girl absently played with the small handmade necklace she had made over a year ago, an identical gift she had given to her beloved grandmother, Grandma Cecilia, before her mysterious disappearance. "Manuela, stand still and smile for the photographers," Carmen whispered, lightly squeezing her stepdaughter's shoulder. "Your father is closing an important deal with Senator Matthew." Manuela nodded automatically, but her interest was drawn to the large window overlooking the street. Through the glass, she could see a group of homeless people gathered near the entrance, attracted by the smell of food and the warmth escaping from the building on that cold London winter night. "Why can't they come in and eat too? There's so much food left in here," Manuela asked, pointing to a table laden with almost untouched dishes. "Don't be naive, darling," Carmen replied with a practiced smile. "We are raising funds precisely to help these people, but they can't just walk into an event like this." "But that doesn't make sense. We're in a display window eating and drinking in front of them," the girl protested, her voice beginning to rise. "It's like showing a plate of food to someone hungry and then throwing it away." Henry approached, noticing his daughter's agitation. "What's going on here?" "Nothing, dear," Carmen quickly intervened. "Manuela is just a little tired." "I'm not tired. I'm outraged," Manuela exclaimed, tears welling in her eyes. "You talk about helping, but you're just showing off. I'm going out right now to take food to those people." Before any of the adults could react, Manuela had already grabbed a plate and began filling it with snacks from the nearest table. Guests watched, some with surprise, others with discreet embarrassment. "Manuela, come back here right now," Henry ordered, trying to maintain his composure as his daughter headed determinedly for the exit door. Ignoring her father's calls and her stepmother's disapproving glances, Manuela stepped out onto the pavement, where the cold London night greeted her with a gust of wind. She timidly approached the group, offering the plate of food. A grey-haired woman, wrapped in a worn blanket, looked up gratefully. It was at that moment that Manuela saw hanging around the woman's neck, almost hidden among layers of shabby clothes, was a small handmade necklace, a necklace identical to hers, identical to the one she had made for her grandmother, Grandma Cecilia, who had mysteriously disappeared over a year ago. The plate slipped from Manuela's hands and fell to the ground, scattering food on the pavement. Her heart raced. "Ma'am, that necklace. Where did you get that necklace?" Manuela asked, her voice trembling with emotion. The woman, startled by the girl's sudden agitation, merely clutched the blanket tighter against her body and moved a few steps away, muttering incomprehensible words. Desperate, Manuela ran back into the ballroom. She needed to tell her father what she had seen, but he was surrounded by men in suits, all engrossed in a discussion about investments. Carmen intercepted her before she could reach him. "What do you think you're doing? You've caused enough scandal for one night," her stepmother whispered, holding her arm. "I need to talk to my father. It's important. I saw Grandma Cecilia's necklace. She might be alive," Manuela exclaimed, trying to break free. Something in Carmen's gaze shifted for a second. A flash of fear, concern, but it was so quick that Manuela barely noticed. "Your grandmother has been missing for over a year, darling. The doctor explained that she had a psychotic episode and is probably..." Well, you know the chances aren't good, Carmen said, softening her voice. You're seeing things that aren't there because you haven't accepted reality yet. No, I know what I saw. It was the necklace I made for her, with the blue stones and the wooden star in the middle. No one else has one like it. Henry finally noticed the commotion and approached. What's going on now? Before Carmen could intervene, Manuela broke free and ran to her father. In her desperate haste, she bumped into a waiter, causing a tray with wine glasses to fall on the senator, staining his impeccable suit. The entire ballroom fell silent. Senator Matthew, red with anger, futilely wiped the stains from his clothes while Henry apologized profusely. That was on purpose. This girl needs discipline, the senator vociferated. 1,000 apologies, Senator. My daughter is going through a difficult time. Henry tried to appease the situation while holding Manuela firmly by the shoulder. Father, you have to listen to me. I saw Grandma Cecilia, or at least her necklace. That lady on the pavement was wearing the necklace I made for Grandma. Something in his daughter's conviction made Henry hesitate. He turned to Carmen, who was already approaching with a tense smile. Let's check this, he finally said, ignoring Carmen's protests and the disapproving glances of the guests. Henry, Manuela and Carmen went out onto the pavement. But the group of people had dispersed. Only an elderly woman remained sitting at the nearby bus stop, but it was not the same one Manuela had seen. There was no sign of the necklace. See? You imagined all of it, Carmen said with a barely disguised sigh of relief. Henry looked at his daughter with a mixture of compassion and concern. Manny, I know you miss your grandmother. We all do. But we need to accept that she's gone. No, Father. I know what I saw. It was Grandma Cecilia's necklace. Someone took her away, Manuela insisted, tears streaming down her face. Please believe me. On the way back home in the comfortable Kensington neighborhood, the silence inside the black Mercedes was thick and uncomfortable. Anthony, the driver, kept his eyes fixed on the road, occasionally exchanging glances with Carmen in the rearview mirror. Back at the Montgomery mansion, while Manuela was taken to her room by the governess, Henry and Carmen had a heated argument in the office. She needs psychological help, Henry, Carmen insisted. This obsession with her grandmother is getting out of control. She loved my mother very much, Carmen. It's natural that she's still grieving. Yes, but creating hallucinations isn't healthy. First it was the messages she said your mother left in her room. Now it's this imaginary necklace. Upstairs, Manuela couldn't sleep. The image of the necklace around that woman's neck wouldn't leave her mind. She wasn't crazy or making up stories. She knew exactly what the necklace she had made for her grandmother looked like. Every stone, every detail had been chosen with care. Grandma Cecilia is alive, she whispered to herself, clutching her own necklace between her fingers. And I'm going to find her. As the mansion fell asleep, Manuela made a plan. Early tomorrow, when everyone was still sleeping, she would sneak out of the house and return to that spot. She would find that woman again and discover the truth about her grandmother. Because deep in her heart she was certain Grandma Cecilia Montgomery was alive somewhere, and the necklace was the only clue she had to find her. What Manuela didn't know was that, in the master bedroom, Carmen was making a hurried call, whispering alarmed words into the phone. We have a problem. The girl saw the necklace. Yes, that necklace. No, I'm not sure if it was her. We need to act fast. 2 years earlier, the Montgomery family lived in relative harmony. The mansion in Kensington was home to Henry, his mother Grandma Cecilia, and little Manuela. The businessman was still grieving the absence of his wife Teresa, who had passed away after a long illness when Manuela was just 5 years old. The emotional wounds were beginning to heal, and Grandma Cecilia's constant and loving presence was fundamental for both her son and her granddaughter. Grandma Cecilia, at a lively 70 years old, was the heart of that home. A strong woman, widowed for decades, she had raised her son alone after her husband had left for reasons never fully clarified. She cultivated a small medicinal herb garden at the back of the mansion, where she spent mornings teaching Manuela the secrets of plants. Her skilled hands also created beautiful handicrafts that they sold at charity fairs. It was on one of those sunny days in the garden that Manuela had the idea of creating matching necklaces for herself and her grandmother. 2 identical pendants made with blue stones and a carved wooden star. a symbol of the constellation they both admired on clear nights. "Grandma, this will be our secret," the girl said as she handed over the gift. "Even when we're far apart, we'll know we're connected." "It's the most precious gift I've ever received, my love," Grandma Cecilia replied, placing the necklace around her neck. "I'll never take it off." Around the same time, Henry's life took an unexpected turn when he met Carmen Vance at a charity event in Hyde Park. She was the event organizer, a stunning 35-year-old woman with perfectly styled dark hair and a magnetic smile. Her poise in dealing with influential people impressed Henry. "You're Henry Montgomery, correct? Your company is one of this year's largest donors," she said, approaching him during the cocktail hour. "Please call me Henry," he replied, charmed by the woman's elegance. "I've always supported social causes, though I confess I don't quite understand where all this money goes." "Then let me show you," Carmen proposed, taking his arm. "We have a public school revitalization project that is transforming the lives of many children." The walk through the event turned into a dinner, which led to another meeting, and soon Henry was completely smitten. Carmen seemed perfect, intelligent, sophisticated, and most importantly to him, she showed great affection for Manuela in their first encounters. "Your daughter is extraordinary, Henry," Carmen commented after meeting the girl. "So sensitive and intelligent for her age." Grandma Cecilia, however, did not share her son's enthusiasm. There was something in Carmen's gaze that bothered her, a calculating coldness that appeared when she thought no one was watching. "Son, don't you think you're moving too fast?" "You barely know this woman," Grandma Cecilia warned, as Henry showed off photos of the couple on a trip to Brighton. "Mother, I know what I'm doing. I'm a grown man. Maturity doesn't protect us from mistakes. Henry, I have a bad feeling." Grandma Cecilia's reservations grew when, after only 6 months of dating, Carmen and Henry announced their engagement. It was during the celebration party, held at the mansion, that the elderly woman witnessed something disturbing. In the garden, while looking for Manuela to show her the stars, Grandma Cecilia saw Carmen in the arms of Anthony, the recently hired driver. It wasn't a casual hug. The two were kissing intensely, murmuring words she couldn't distinguish. When they separated, Carmen smoothed her hair with a satisfied smile, and Anthony returned into the house by an alternative route. Shocked, Grandma Cecilia waited for the appropriate moment to confront her future daughter-in-law. The next morning she found Carmen alone in the kitchen. "I saw you and the driver last night," she said directly, without mincing words. Carmen froze for a second but quickly regained her composure. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You know very well. You were kissing in the garden during the engagement party. I'm going to tell my son." For an instant, Carmen's mask slipped, revealing a glacial stare. "No one will believe you, old woman. It will be your word against mine. And believe me, I know how to make Henry think you're getting confused. My son knows me. He knows I wouldn't invent something like this." "Oh, but you're not as lucid as you think, are you? I've noticed how you sometimes forget where you put things, how you confuse the days." Grandma Cecilia paled. It was true that she occasionally had small lapses, normal for her age, but nothing serious. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm just stating facts," Carmen replied, returning to her usual sweet tone. "It would be a shame if Henry had to admit you to a nursing home for cognitive problems." In the following days, strange things began to happen. Grandma Cecilia's important objects disappeared and reappeared in improbable places. Appointments were scheduled in her diary without her knowledge, causing her to miss consultations or appear in the wrong places. Henry began receiving concerned calls from Carmen about his mother's behavior. "She was talking to herself in the garden today, darling." And when I asked who she was talking to, she got aggressive. Carmen also began replacing the old household staff with trusted people. The governess who had served the family for 2 decades was the first to be dismissed, accused of having broken a valuable piece of the porcelain collection. The gardener was next, followed by the cook. Grandma Cecilia watched powerless as her home transformed. The warm colors of the walls gave way to cold, impersonal tones. The antique furniture that told the family's history was replaced by modern, soulless pieces. Even her medicinal herbs were removed to make way for a geometric garden that Carmen considered more appropriate. Despite everything, Grandma Cecilia persisted in her attempts to warn her son. One night, as Henry worked in his office, she gathered the courage for a frank conversation. "Son, I need you to listen carefully. Carmen is not who she appears to be." Henry sighed, rubbing his tired eyes. "Mother, we've talked about this. I know it's hard to accept another woman in this house after so many years, but it's not that. She's having an affair with the driver, Anthony. I've seen them together several times." Henry's expression hardened. "That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof?" "Isn't my word enough? I'm your mother." At that moment, Carmen entered the office carrying a tray with tea. Her timing was perfect, as always. "Am I interrupting something?" "Nothing important," Henry replied, giving his mother a warning look. Mother was just leaving. Later that night, Grandma Cecilia overheard a heated argument between Henry and Carmen. "Your mother is getting worse. Henry, perhaps we should consider a full neurological evaluation. She has always been so lucid, so strong. Aging can be cruel. Dr. Oswald Barnes, that neurologist I met at the hospital, could examine her. He specializes in senile dementia." The next morning, Grandma Cecilia found Manuela in the garden and realized she was her only ally. "Manny, I need you to keep a secret. Something important is happening in this house, and I need you to observe, to pay attention." "What is it, Grandma?" "People are not always what they seem. Especially your—" Grandma Cecilia stopped as she noticed Carmen approaching. "We'll talk more later, dear." The consultations with Dr. Oswald began, always accompanied by Carmen, who whispered things into the doctor's ear before they entered the office. After 3 visits, the diagnosis came: early stages of dementia. Henry was devastated. "We'll take care of her," Carmen promised, with false compassion. "I have the best medical contacts." It was then that Grandma Cecilia began receiving medication daily, pills that made her dizzy, confused, unable to organize her thoughts. When she tried to refuse, Carmen insisted in front of Henry. "See how resistant she is? It's part of the illness, darling." One afternoon, when Carmen went out to attend to wedding errands, Grandma Cecilia managed a moment of clarity. She found Manuela in her room and handed her a small folded paper. "If something happens to me, look for this person. It's Bernard, our former driver. He knows important things." Before she could explain more, Anthony appeared at the door with a glass of water and another pill. "Time for your medicine, Grandma Cecilia." The following evening, during the rehearsal dinner for the religious wedding, Grandma Cecilia, already visibly weakened by the medication, managed a last moment of lucidity when Henry announced the date of the civil ceremony. "No," she stammered, trying to stand up. "Henry, you can't—" "She and Anthony, they're deceiving you." The guests fell into an awkward silence. Anthony quickly approached with another glass of water, insisting she take the anxiety medicine. "Let's take her upstairs. She's having another episode," Carmen said with feigned concern. That was the last time Manuela saw her grandmother. The next morning, Henry gathered the family to announce that Grandma Cecilia had disappeared during the night. Carmen feigned despair, organizing searches and alerting authorities. "She may have had an episode due to dementia. We need to find her quickly." Weeks of fruitless searches turned into months. The police, influenced by carefully prepared medical reports, concluded that Grandma Cecilia had probably become disoriented and suffered an accident. The civil wedding was postponed indefinitely, to Carmen's poorly disguised frustration. A year later, the case was closed. Grandma Cecilia Montgomery was officially declared missing, possibly deceased. The only person who never lost hope was Manuela, who continued to wear her necklace every day, waiting for the moment she would reunite with her beloved grandmother. And now, on that gala night, that moment seemed to have finally arrived. Manuela woke up startled at 5 in the morning. Outside, the London sky was still dark, with only a faint hint that day would soon break. The girl looked at the owl-shaped alarm clock, a gift from her grandmother, and took a deep breath. She had spent the night planning every detail of her escape. Careful not to make a sound, she got up and changed from her pajamas into jeans, a t-shirt, a hoodie, and comfortable trainers. She picked up the backpack she had prepared the night before. Inside, she'd put a change of clothes, the little money she kept in her piggy bank, a small notebook with important addresses, a bottle of water, and some biscuits. Finally, she tied her brown hair in a ponytail and put the handmade necklace around her neck, touching it as if it were an amulet. Before leaving, Manuela wrote a simple note. I went to find Grandma Cecilia. I know she's alive. Don't worry, I'll be back soon. Love, Manny. She left the note on the neatly made bed and headed for the window. Her suite was on the second floor of the mansion, but there was a leafy tree whose branches almost touched her window, an escape route she had secretly tested a few times when she wanted to observe the stars from the garden without her stepmother knowing. With surprising agility for a girl her age, Manuela climbed down the branches, jumping the last few feet to the lawn. She quickly crouched behind a bush when she saw the security guard's hut light moving. Mr. George was doing his morning rounds. She waited until he turned the corner of the house and silently ran to the back gate used by staff. The padlock was locked, but Manuela knew the code, 2408, her father's birthday. She typed the numbers on the small keypad, and the electronic latch opened with a soft click. The girl slipped out of the property and found herself on the still deserted street of the elegant Kensington neighborhood. The sun was beginning to rise on the horizon when Manuela arrived at the bus stop. She consulted the mental map she had memorized. She needed to catch the first bus to the city center to return to the location of the charity event from the previous night. She remembered the institute's name perfectly. She would be there in less than an hour if everything went as planned. Meanwhile, at the Montgomery mansion, Carmen woke up restless. She had slept poorly, disturbed by the memory of Manuela's expression when she mentioned the necklace. She got out of bed without waking Henry and walked silently to her stepdaughter's room, just to check if everything was all right. Upon opening the door and finding the empty bed with the note, she felt a wave of panic. She quickly read the message and her face paled. She grabbed her phone and dialed a number, moving away into the hallway. Anthony? We have a serious problem. The girl ran away. Yes, to look for the old woman. I don't know how, but she saw the necklace yesterday. I need you to find her before it's too late. Then Carmen prepared to play the role of the worried stepmother. She returned to the room and shook Henry abruptly. Henry! Wake up, Manuela has disappeared. The businessman got up alarmed. What do you mean, disappeared? Carmen handed him the note, feigning nervousness. I found this in her room. The bed is empty, the windows open. She ran away, Henry. As Manuela's father read the note with an expression of disbelief, Carmen was already activating her alternative plan. I'm going to call all the staff. We need to form search teams immediately. She mentions my mother. Why does Manuela still insist on this? Henry ran his hands through his hair, visibly disturbed. Her obsession is getting worse, darling. That's why I've been pushing for therapy. I'll call the police too. Yes, do that. I'll get dressed and go look for her personally. Carmen nodded, but as soon as Henry entered the bathroom, she made another quick call. Dr. Oswald Barnes, it's urgent. I need you to prepare a report on Manuela Montgomery's psychological instability. Yes, today. It's a family emergency. In the next 30 minutes, the mansion transformed into an operations center. Security guards and staff were mobilized, all receiving specific instructions from Carmen on where and how to search. The police were called, but with a subtly manipulated version of the facts. My stepdaughter has been exhibiting disturbed behavior in recent months, Carmen explained to the officer recording the incident. She's obsessed with the idea that her grandmother, who disappeared over a year ago, is alive. We have medical reports that prove her fragile emotional state. Henry, hearing this, gave his wife an inquisitive look. What reports are those? Why didn't you show them to me before? I didn't want to worry you, darling. Dr. Barnes warned me about the signs weeks ago, but I hoped it was just a phase. The officer noted everything carefully. We'll issue an alert and direct our patrol cars to the city center, since the event mentioned was there. Do you have a recent photo of her? While Henry provided the photo, Carmen sent a discreet message to Anthony. Police heading to the center. Intercept her before. Unaware of all this commotion, Manuela was already on the second bus approaching central London. The city was gradually waking up, with workers heading to their jobs and students on their way to schools. No one paid much attention to a well-dressed girl traveling alone. As she got off at the stop near the London Humanitarian Institute, Manuela felt a chill in her stomach. The place looked very different in daylight. Less imposing, more ordinary. Some staff were cleaning the pavement, removing the last traces of the previous night's event. The girl timidly approached an elderly woman who was sweeping the entrance. Good morning. Last night there were some people out front, homeless people. Do you know where they usually go during the day? The employee looked at Manuela with curiosity. Shouldn't you be at school, girl? It's a school project, Manuela quickly lied. I'm studying about people in vulnerable social situations. The woman seemed to accept the explanation. Well, many of them usually go to Charing Cross Bridge or Trafalgar Square during the day. There's food distribution there sometimes. Others stay in a particularly rough area of the city, but that's no place for a child like you. Manuela thanked her and began walking towards Trafalgar Square, following the woman's directions. The streets were getting busier, with shops opening their doors and traffic intensifying. The girl walked determinedly, although her expression revealed the fear she tried to hide. Not far from there, in a black car with tinted windows, Anthony received new instructions by phone. The police are searching Charing Cross Bridge. Go to Trafalgar Square and be discreet. If you find her, don't approach directly. Follow her to see if she finds the old woman. We need to know if Cecilia is really there. At the Montgomery mansion, Carmen finally managed to be alone for a few minutes in the office. She quickly accessed the computer and deleted files from a flash drive. Then she prepared to accompany Henry in the search, but not before making a call to another accomplice. I need you to take some documents to the address we agreed on. Yes, those same ones. No, she hasn't signed yet, but it doesn't matter anymore. I'll resolve everything today, one way or another. Meanwhile, Henry was increasingly worried. Something in Carmen's story didn't seem consistent. Why had she hidden the alleged reports about Manuela's mental health? And why would his daughter, normally so sensible despite her young age, run away like that? Determined to follow his intuition, Henry made a private call to an old friend. Robert, I need your help. My daughter has disappeared, and something isn't right about this story. I'll send you the note she left. I want you to look for any information about my mother in recent months. Hospital records, social services, anything. In Trafalgar Square, Manuela observed groups of homeless people gathered near the cathedral. Her heart pounded as she scanned each face in search of the woman she had seen with the necklace. She approached a younger man who was distributing water bottles. Hi, I'm looking for an elderly lady who wears a handmade necklace with a wooden star. Do you know anyone like that? The man scratched his sparse beard. Lots of people come and go around here, girl. Can't know everyone. Please, it's very important. She has gray hair, must be about 70. Hold on. Are you talking about the herb lady? An old woman who sometimes talks nonsense but knows everything about medicinal plants. Manuela's heart raced. Her grandmother was known for her knowledge of herbs. Yes, it could be her. Where can I find her? She usually stays near St. Paul's Cathedral garden in the mornings. She helps take care of the plants there, you know. The staff lets her because she has a way with green things. Manuela thanked him effusively and ran in the indicated direction. She didn't notice when a man in dark glasses began to follow her discreetly, talking on the phone. I located the girl. She's heading to St. Paul's Cathedral garden. Looks like the old woman might be there. On the other end of the line, Carmen replied, Don't let her find her. If it really is Cecilia, you know what to do. Manuela's run through historic London took her through old streets and uneven pavements. When she finally arrived at St. Paul's Cathedral garden, she was out of breath. The place, one of the historic landmarks of the city's foundation, was relatively quiet at that hour of the morning. The girl anxiously explored the outer gardens, examining every bench, every corner, where an elderly person might be. That's when she noticed, near an herb bed, a hunched figure, her back to her, wearing simple worn clothes. The woman was tending the soil with delicate movements, like someone intimately familiar with the behavior of plants. Manuela's heart almost stopped when she saw, hanging around the woman's neck, the unmistakable gleam of her handmade necklace with the wooden star. Grandma Cecilia? She called with a trembling voice, approaching slowly. The woman turned, revealing a face aged beyond her years, marked by time and hardship. Her eyes, once lively and bright, now seemed empty, distant. There was no recognition in her gaze when it met Manuela's. Grandma? It's me, Manuela? Your granddaughter. The woman merely blinked, confused, and returned her attention to the plants. She murmured disconnected words as she caressed the leaves of a lemon balm plant. Manuela felt tears stream down her face. It was her grandmother, she was absolutely certain. The same necklace, the same affection for plants, but something was profoundly wrong. It was as if Grandma Cecilia was present only in body, while her mind wandered somewhere distant. The girl approached closer and gently touched her grandmother's arm. "Grandma, what did they do to you? I'm going to take you home, I promise." It was at that moment that Manuela noticed two men approaching. One of them was Anthony, the driver. The other she didn't recognize, but his gaze was equally threatening. "We finally found you, Manuela," Anthony said, forcing a smile. "Your father is very worried. Let's go. Home now." Manuela recoiled, placing herself protectively in front of her grandmother. "Asia, no, you did this to her. You hurt her. Child, don't be ridiculous. This woman isn't even your grandmother. Come now, or we'll have to take you by force." The two men advanced, but Manuela, in a desperate impulse, grabbed her grandmother's hand and ran in the opposite direction, into the historic building. "Help, they're trying to hurt us," she shouted, attracting the attention of security guards and visitors. The ensuing confusion allowed Manuela and the elderly woman to hide in a ladies' restroom. Locked in a cubicle, the girl hugged her grandmother, who trembled without understanding what was happening. "It's going to be okay." "Grandma," Manuela whispered, stroking the elderly woman's gray hair. "I'm going to take care of you now. I promise I won't let them hurt you again." Outside, Anthony and his accomplice were discussing tensely on the phone with Carmen. "We lost them both. The local security is alerted. We need a new plan. Find them at all costs." Carmen's voice was icy. "If that old woman regains her memory and talks, we're all lost." What none of them knew was that Henry, following his intuition, had changed his search route and was also heading to historic London, accompanied by his friend Robert and two police officers who had responded to the initial call. The truth was about to come to light, and the reunion that would forever change the fate of the Montgomery family was just moments away. Henry Montgomery drove his own car through central London, something he rarely did. Normally Anthony would be at the wheel, but the driver had left in a hurry when they learned of Manuela's disappearance. This behavior, coupled with other strange details, raised an alarm in Henry. Why would Carmen have hidden medical reports about my daughter? He wondered, as he maneuvered through the congested streets of the center. Beside him, Robert, his childhood friend and private investigator, analyzed the note Manuela had left. "Henry, when was the last time you saw your mother before her disappearance?" Robert asked, adjusting his glasses as he looked at the message written by the girl. "On the night of the rehearsal dinner for the religious wedding. She had an episode. She started saying nonsense about Carmen and Anthony." "What kind of things?" Henry hesitated, uncomfortable. "Accusations. She said they were both deceiving me, that they were having an affair." Robert raised his eyebrows. "And you completely dismissed that possibility?" "My mother was ill, Robert." "The doctors confirmed the dementia diagnosis." "Which doctor, exactly?" "Dr. Oswald Barnes." "The neurologist Carmen knew." Robert made notes on his phone. "And this doctor, did he treat your mother before Carmen came into your lives?" The question hung in the air as Henry parked near St. Paul's Cathedral garden. His intuition had led him there. He remembered how his mother loved that place, considered it the historical heart of the city. If Manuela was looking for clues about her grandmother, perhaps she had thought of it too. In the ladies' restroom of the historic building, Manuela tried to calm Grandma Cecilia, who seemed increasingly agitated in the confined space. "Grandma, we need to stay quiet just a little longer," she whispered, holding the elderly woman's trembling hands. "Garden. Go back garden," Grandma Cecilia babbled, looking anxiously at the door. "Plants need water." Manuela felt a pang of sadness. What had they done to her grandmother? The strong, lucid woman she had known was now reduced to disjointed phrases and lost looks. Still, something of Grandma Cecilia's essence remained, her love for plants, the necklace she had never taken off her neck. "Soon we'll go to a beautiful garden." "I promise," Manuela assured, stroking the gray hair. "But first we need to find my father." A noise outside made both of them jump. Heavy footsteps approached, and a male voice called Manuela's name. The girl recognized the tone. It was Anthony. Instinctively, she placed herself between the door and her grandmother. "We know you're in there." The driver's voice sounded dangerously calm. "There's no way out, Manuela. Be a good girl and come with us. Your stepmother is very worried." Manuela didn't answer. Instead, she looked frantically around, searching for an escape route. The only window was too small and too high to reach. They were cornered. That's when she heard another voice, distant but familiar, calling her name. "Manuela, are you here?" "Certainly, father," the girl shouted, feeling a wave of relief. "We're in the ladies' restroom. Watch out for Anthony, he wants to hurt us." Outside, the situation quickly descended into chaos. Henry ran towards his daughter's voice, while Robert and the police intercepted Anthony and his accomplice, who were trying to escape. A brief chase through the historic corridors ended with the two men immobilized by the officers. "Where's my daughter?" "What did you do?" Henry demanded, confronting Anthony, who, pressed against the wall by the police, maintained a defiant expression. "Just following orders, boss," the driver replied with a cynical smile. "Your wife will be disappointed." Leaving Robert and the police to deal with the captives, Henry rushed to the ladies' restroom. "Manuela? It's me, daughter. You can open up." The cubicle door slowly unlocked and Manuela's face appeared, bathed in tears of relief. "Father, I found Grandma Cecilia. She's alive." Henry froze when from behind his daughter he saw a fragile figure emerge with grey hair and worn clothes. Despite the altered appearance, there was no doubt. It was his mother. His knees buckled and he had to lean against the wall. "Mother?" he whispered, unable to believe what his eyes saw. How is this possible?" Grandma Cecilia looked at him without any sign of recognition. Her eyes, once lively and shrewd, were dull, distant, as if observing the world through a thick fog. "She doesn't recognize anyone." "Father," Manuela explained, holding her grandmother's hand protectively, "I think they gave her medicine, like the ones my stepmother said were for her illness." Henry approached slowly, extending his hand to touch his mother's face. "Mother, it's me, Henry, your son." A slight tremor passed through Grandma Cecilia's body, but no sign of recognition lit up her gaze. She merely clutched the necklace tighter against her chest in a defensive gesture. "We need to take her to a hospital immediately," Henry decided, regaining control of the situation. "And then we'll understand exactly what happened." As they left the historic building, a group of curious onlookers formed around the police officers who were still detaining Anthony and his accomplice. Robert approached Henry, his face grave. "You won't believe what I found," he said softly, showing his phone screen. "I made some calls while you were at Iku, looking for Manuela. Dr. Oswald Barnes had his medical license, suspended 3 months ago for falsifying reports and irregularly prescribing controlled medications." Henry felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. "My God, what did Carmen do?" "There's more," Robert continued. "Those papers you signed, giving Carmen power of attorney over your assets if something happened to you. The notary confirmed there were irregularities. Your mother's signature as a witness was forged." At that moment, Henry understood the extent of the betrayal. It wasn't just an affair between his wife and the driver. It was an elaborate plan to take control of his fortune. His mother, who had tried to warn him, had been silenced. And now Manuela, the only one who never stopped believing her grandmother was alive, was also in danger. "We need to find Carmen before she discovers we know the truth," he said, his face hardening with determination. "And we need to take my mother to a reliable hospital, away from any influence of hers." Robert nodded, already typing on his phone. "I know an excellent neurological clinic in Mayfair. The director is my sister-in-law. We can take Grandma Cecilia there right now without preliminary records. As for Carmen, I've already asked them to put surveillance on the mansion and at the airports." As they headed to the car, Henry noticed how Manuela carefully looked after her grandmother, guiding her uncertain steps, speaking in a low, reassuring voice. The 10-year-old girl showed surprising maturity, born perhaps from the pain of having lost her grandmother once, and the determination never to let it happen again. "You were very brave." "Manny," he said, hugging his daughter's shoulders. "How did you know it was really your grandmother?" Manuela touched her own necklace. "The necklace, father. Remember, I made 2 identical ones, one for me and one for her. Grandma promised never to take hers off. When I saw that lady wearing the same necklace last night, I knew it could only be her." In the car on the way to the clinic, Henry received a call from one of the mansion's security guards. "Mr. Montgomery, Mrs. Carmen just left in a great hurry. She took some suitcases and documents. She seemed nervous when she learned you had found your daughter. Was she alone?" "Yes, sir. She said she was going to meet you, but I noticed she headed in the opposite direction from the city center." Henry exchanged significant glances with Robert. "She's fleeing," Contact the police again. At the neurological clinic in Mayfair, Grandma Cecilia was received with attention and care. Dr. Lucy, Robert's sister-in-law, ordered a battery of tests and initiated a detoxification protocol. From what I'm seeing in the first tests, she was subjected to a dangerous combination of psychotropic drugs, the doctor explained after the initial evaluations. Drugs that induce confusion, memory loss, and a semi-catatonic state. It's a miracle there hasn't been permanent brain damage. Will she recover? Manuela asked, refusing to leave her grandmother's side. The doctor smiled gently. We cannot speak of complete recovery with certainty. The human brain is complex, and she was subjected to toxic substances for a prolonged period. But I am optimistic. The fact that she already recognizes you and can form coherent sentences, even simple ones, is extraordinary. And the memories of what happened? Will she be able to recall how she ended up on the street? Oh, it's likely. Traumatic memories can be suppressed not only by medication, but as a defense mechanism of the brain itself. As she feels safer, these memories may emerge. But we need to be careful. Reliving trauma can be destabilizing. As they talked, Robert entered the room, accompanied by Detective Inspector Jordan Miller, responsible for the case. We have important news, Robert announced, placing a folder on the table. The depositions of Anthony and his accomplice, Marcus, have opened several lines of investigation. The detective took the floor, her expression serious. Anthony confessed everything in exchange for a reduced sentence. It seems Carmen and he have known each other for years, long before she appeared in your life, Henry. It was a meticulously planned scam from the beginning. Henry felt his stomach churn. What do you mean? Carmen researched you for months. She studied your habits, your preferences, your routine. She knew exactly where you would be at that event in Hyde Park. The casual meeting was carefully orchestrated. Robert opened the folder, revealing photographs and documents. We discovered that her real name is Caroline Menzies. She has applied similar scams to at least 3 other businessmen in different counties. Typically, she targets widowers or divorced men with significant assets. Henry examined the documents, recognizing the woman in the photographs despite the different hair and less sophisticated appearance. It was unquestionably Carmen, or Caroline, the person who almost destroyed his family. And what about my mother? How did they manage to make her disappear without a trace? The detective took a deep breath before answering. According to Anthony, after months of administering medication that affected Grandma Cecilia's cognition, they planned to deliver the final blow on the night of the civil wedding. While you and Manuela were taken for an outing, they kidnapped her and abandoned her in Croydon, in the metropolitan area, near a shelter for homeless people. The idea was that, disoriented by the medication and without documents, she would simply disappear on the streets. Henry felt his blood boil. My God, they just threw her on the street like a disposable object. Yes, the detective confirmed, her professional tone unable to hide her indignation. They counted on her debilitated condition and advanced age, meaning she wouldn't survive long on the streets. The plan was cruel precisely in its simplicity. How did she manage to survive for so long? Henry asked, his voice choked with emotion. Robert consulted his notes. From what we've gathered from people who knew her on the streets, she was initially taken in by a group living under Charing Cross Bridge. Even confused, she showed knowledge of medicinal plants, which earned her some respect in the community. Later, she started frequenting St. Paul's Cathedral Garden, where she cared for the small herb garden. The staff there, noticing her way with plants, allowed her to stay nearby. The detective's phone vibrated. After reading the message, she looked at Henry with a grave expression. Carmen is requesting a deal with the Crown Prosecution Service. She is willing to reveal all the details of the scheme in exchange for a reduced sentence. What kind of details? Henry questioned, frowning. Apparently, she didn't act alone. There are other people involved, including Dr. Oswald Barnes and possibly other professionals who assisted in the falsification of documents and medical reports. At that moment, a nurse appeared at the door, her face showing urgency. Dr. Lucy, Grandma Cecilia is having an episode. She seems very agitated and is calling for her son. Everyone rushed to the room, where they found Grandma Cecilia sitting on the bed, eyes wide and hands trembling. Manuela held her grandmother's hand, trying to calm her, but panic was evident on the elderly woman's face. "Mother, I'm here," Henry said, approaching quickly. "What happened? Henry!" Grandma Cecilia exclaimed, her voice firmer than in recent days. "She's coming. The bad woman. She's going to try again." Dr. Lucy quickly checked the patient's vital signs. Elevated blood pressure, tachycardia. It seems to be an intense, anxious response. "Grandma Cecilia, you are safe here. No one will hurt you." "No, you don't understand," the elderly woman insisted, gripping her son's arm with surprising strength. "She said she'd come back to finish the job. I heard her talking on the phone before they took me." Henry exchanged alarmed glances with the detective. "Mother, are you talking about Carmen? She's in custody. She can't harm anyone now, not just her." "The doctor, too. And that man in the dark suit, the one who signed the fake papers." The detective approached the bed. "Grandma Cecilia, I'm Jordan Miller, a detective with the Metropolitan Police. Can you remember more details about this man in the suit?" Grandma Cecilia frowned, concentrating. "He came to the mansion late at night. Brought documents for Henry to sign. Talked about power of attorney, if you will." "Marlon Taylor," Robert murmured, looking at Henry. "Your lawyer." "Impossible," Henry protested. "Marlon has worked for my family for decades, which would explain privileged access to documents and information about your assets," the detective observed, already typing a message on her phone. "I'll request the immediate seizure of files from his office." As tension grew in the room, Manuela remained by her grandmother's side, watching her face intently. It was then that she noticed something. Grandma Cecilia seemed to follow with her eyes something only she could see. "Grandma, what are you looking at?" she asked gently. "The garden." "My garden at the mansion," the elderly woman replied, her gaze distant. "The herbs. They know." They saw Dr. Lucy gestured for everyone to remain calm. "She may be having flashbacks. It's common during trauma recovery." "Grandma Cecilia, what did the herbs see?" "The poison. In the tea. They put it in my chamomile tea every night," Grandma Cecilia explained, her words becoming clearer and more articulate. "Carmen said it was sleeping medicine, but I saw when she thought I wasn't looking. Crushed pills, white powder, mixed into the liquid." "She's recalling," the doctor whispered to Henry. "This is extraordinary. The detoxification is allowing memories to return." Grandma Cecilia continued, as if a floodgate had opened in her mind. "When I started to suspect, I stopped drinking the tea. I pretended to drink it, but I threw it away when no one was watching. That's when I heard the conversation in the garden." "What conversation, Grandma?" Manuela encouraged. "Carmen and the lawyer, Marlon. They talked about the will, about how they needed my signature, or my permanent absence for the document to be valid." The revelation hit Henry like a punch. His trusted lawyer, the man who had handled the family's legal affairs for years, was part of the conspiracy. How could he have been so blind? "After that," Grandma Cecilia continued, "I tried to warn you, son, on the night of the rehearsal dinner. But they gave me something stronger that day. I could barely speak. And then, what happened when they took you from home?" the detective asked carefully. Grandma Cecilia's face contorted with the painful memory. "Anthony and another man put me in a car. They said it was for special treatment. They drove for a long time, then abandoned me near a bridge, without documents, without money." Tears streamed down the elderly woman's wrinkled face as the traumatic memories emerged. "I tried to tell people who I was, but the words didn't come out right. No one believed. They thought I was just a confused old woman. Over time, I started to doubt myself." Henry held his mother's hand, devastated by the pain she had endured. "Forgive me, Mother. I should have believed you." "It wasn't your fault," Grandma Cecilia comforted, squeezing her son's hand. "They were very convincing. Even I doubted my own sanity at times." "How did you survive on the streets?" Robert asked gently. A small smile appeared on Grandma Cecilia's lips. "The plants! They were always my friends. Even confused, I recognized medicinal herbs. I helped people. With teas for pain, poultices for wounds. In return, they gave me food, protection." She touched the necklace around her neck. "And this? I never took it off. Even on the hardest days when I couldn't remember my own name, I knew it was important. That it connected me to someone special." Manuela couldn't hold back her tears. "I knew you were alive, Grandma. I always knew." As the emotional family scene unfolded, the detective's phone vibrated again. Upon checking the message, her face lit up with professional satisfaction. "We just arrested Marlon Taylor at his office. He was trying to destroy documents when the team arrived. And there's more. They found a safe with fake passports, including one with Carmen's photo and another with Anthony's. So they planned to flee together," Henry concluded, feeling betrayed on multiple levels. "Exactly. And from what we discovered in Anthony's phone messages, Manuela would be the next target. After they obtained full power of attorney over your assets, they planned an accident for the girl." Henry paled, hugging his daughter, protectively. "My God." "Their plan was perfect in its cruelty," the detective continued. "First, to remove Grandma Cecilia, the only person who suspected them. Then to gain legal control over your assets through falsified documents. Finally, to eliminate Manuela, leaving Carmen as the sole beneficiary of everything." Dr. Lucy, noticing the emotional impact of the revelations, intervened. "I think we've had enough emotions for today. Grandma Cecilia needs to rest." Agreeing, the detective prepared to leave. "I'll return tomorrow for a formal statement, if you are up to it. In the meantime, I'll keep guards at the clinic entrance just in case." When everyone had left, leaving only the family in the room, Grandma Cecilia asked to be alone with Henry for a few minutes. Manuela reluctantly left, promising to return soon with a book to read to her grandmother. Alone with her son, Grandma Cecilia held his hands in hers. "Henry, don't blame yourself for what happened. The pain of grief makes us vulnerable. I should have believed you," he lamented. "All the times you tried to warn me. The past cannot be changed, my son. What matters is what we do from now on." Looking at his mother, physically fragile but with her usual unyielding spirit, Henry felt a resolution forming within him. The betrayal of Carmen and her accomplices would not destroy his family. On the contrary, they would emerge stronger, more united, more aware of the precious bond they shared. "We will start over, Mother," he promised, kissing the wrinkled hands that had so often guided him. "A new phase for all of us." Grandma Cecilia smiled, weariness finally setting in after the intense session of memories. Her eyes slowly closed as she murmured, "The necklace saved our lives. The stars always guide us home." Outside the room, Manuela waited with a storybook, her own necklace shining under the fluorescent light of the corridor. The storm that had fallen upon the Montgomery family was finally beginning to dissipate, giving way to the first rays of a new dawn. 3 months had passed since Grandma Cecilia's reunion and the arrest of Carmen, Anthony, and their accomplices. The Montgomery mansion in Kensington, once a place of shadows and secrets, was gradually becoming a home again. On a sunny spring Sunday, the back garden was unrecognizable. The cold geometric design imposed by Carmen had been completely replaced. Now beds of medicinal herbs, colorful flowers, and fruit trees created a welcoming and vibrant environment. In the center, a rustic wooden table was set for breakfast, with fresh fruit, artisan breads, and pots of aromatic tea. Grandma Cecilia, wearing a comfortable blue linen outfit, supervised the final preparations, her keen eye missing no detail. Although she still needed a cane to get around, her posture was erect and her movements firmer each day. Months of intensive treatment had done wonders, not only physically but also mentally. "Zoe, dear, could you bring more of those elderberry jams we made last week?" she asked the governess, who smiled contentedly at seeing her old mistress back in charge. "Of course, Grandma Cecilia. I was just thinking about it," replied Zoe, who had been rehired as soon as Henry regained control of the house. Like her, several former employees dismissed by Carmen returned, bringing back the familiar atmosphere that had been so missed. Manuela skipped into the garden, carrying a small box decorated with colorful ribbons. "Good morning, Grandma. Look what I finished making." The girl opened the box, revealing dozens of small handmade necklaces, all with the same pattern, blue stones and a wooden star in the center. "They're beautiful, my love," Grandma Cecilia exclaimed, admiring her granddaughter's meticulous work. "How many did you manage to make?" 50 exactly. "Do you think there'll be enough for the inauguration tomorrow?" "More than enough," her grandmother assured, kissing the top of the girl's head. "Each person who receives one of these will take a piece of our story home." Henry appeared at the door leading to the garden, accompanied by Robert and an older man Manuela didn't know. "Good morning." "My dears," he greeted, kissing his daughter and mother. "This is Bernard, our former driver." "We finally found him." Grandma Cecilia beamed. "Bernard! It's been so long, my friend." The man with grey hair and a respectful posture gave a small bow. "Grandma Cecilia, what a joy to see you recovered. When I heard on television what happened to you, I could hardly believe it." "Come sit with us," she invited, indicating a chair. "We have much to talk about." As everyone settled at the table and Zoe served coffee, Henry explained to Manuela, "Bernard was our driver for over 20 years. Manny. He was unjustly dismissed shortly after Carmen arrived. She said I had purposely crashed the car," the driver recalled, still with indignation in his voice. "I never even had a single speeding ticket in my entire career. She removed everyone who was loyal to the family," Grandma Cecilia commented, serving tea to the former employee. "She knew you might perceive her intentions." "And will you come back to work with us?" Manuela asked hopefully. Bernard looked at Henry, who nodded with a smile. "Yes, young lady. Your father invited me to coordinate the vehicle fleet for the new project. It will be an honor to contribute." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of two other guests, Detective Inspector Jordan Miller and Dr. Lucy, who regularly came to assess Grandma Cecilia's progress. "Forgive the delay," the detective apologized. "I had to stop by the station to sign some documents." "News about the case?" Robert asked, pulling up chairs for the newcomers. Jordan accepted a cup of coffee before replying. Carmen, or rather Caroline Menzies, accepted the deal with the Crown Prosecution Service. She will cooperate with investigations into the other scams she carried out in exchange for a reduced sentence. "And how long will she be in prison?" Manuela asked, always direct. The detective exchanged glances with Henry, who discreetly nodded, authorizing the full answer. "Even with the reduction, it will be at least 12 years. The crimes were many and serious: kidnapping, false imprisonment, criminal association, falsification of documents, among others." "And Dr. Oswald Barnes?" Grandma Cecilia asked, her face hardening slightly at the mention of the doctor who had helped psychologically torture her. "He definitively lost his medical license and also made a deal. He is implicating other health professionals who participated in the scheme in other similar cases." Henry placed his hand on his mother's in a comforting gesture. "The important thing is that now we can turn this page. Tomorrow we start a new chapter." Everyone at the table knew what he was referring to. After months of careful planning, the Cecilia Montgomery Foundation would be inaugurated, a shelter for homeless people in central London, near St. Paul's Cathedral Garden, where Manuela had found her grandmother. "By the way," Robert said, taking some papers from his folder, "I just received confirmation from the City Council. The additional land has been approved for the future expansion of the foundation." "Excellent," Henry exclaimed. "With that, we'll be able to include the professional training center as early as next year." Dr. Lucy, who had been discreetly observing Grandma Cecilia until then, commented, "I'm impressed with your recovery, Grandma Cecilia. Your cognition is practically normalized." The elderly woman smiled, instinctively touching the necklace around her neck. "I have great incentives to get better, Doctor. And I found that working with my plants is the best therapy." "Grandma will coordinate the Foundation's therapeutic garden," Manuela proudly explained. "She'll teach people how to grow medicinal herbs and make natural remedies." "An excellent occupational therapy," the doctor agreed, "and perfectly aligned with the recovery process." The morning progressed with animated conversations about the plans for the foundation. The project, born from Grandma Cecilia's traumatic experience, transformed pain into purpose. The shelter would offer not only temporary housing, but a complete reintegration program. Documentation, medical care, psychological support, professional training, and legal assistance. "I still can't believe how everything fell into place," Henry commented, as they watched Manuela show Bernard the necklaces she had made. If Manuela hadn't seen that necklace that night. "Fate sometimes works with unusual instruments," Robert philosophized. "A simple handmade necklace changed the course of several lives." "It wasn't just the necklace," Grandma Cecilia corrected. "It was the courage of a girl who refused to believe what everyone said was true. It was her intuition, her determination to follow her heart." At noon, more guests began to arrive for lunch. Staff who would participate in the foundation, volunteer doctors, social workers, and even some homeless people who had known Grandma Cecilia during her time on the streets and who were now in the process of social reintegration. Among them was Marianne, a middle-aged woman who had been the first to welcome Cecilia when she was abandoned in Croydon. Now, after receiving treatment for chemical dependency through a pilot program of the foundation, she would be one of the coordinators of the shelter. Grandma Cecilia saved me even when she herself was lost, Marianne told the group gathered in the garden. She prepared teas for my pains, even without remembering her own name. I've never known anyone with such natural kindness. Lunch extended into the afternoon, with stories being shared, plans being refined, and new bonds being formed. The mansion, once so cold and formal under Carmen's rule, overflowed with life and human warmth. As the sun began to set, painting the London sky with shades of orange and pink, Henry asked for everyone's attention for a toast. I want to thank each of you for being here today. Tomorrow we will officially inaugurate the Cecilia Montgomery Foundation, but the real work has already begun here among us, with these connections we are forming. He raised his glass of grape juice. Alcoholic beverages had been banned from the house, out of respect for the guests in recovery. I toast to resilience, to the truth that always finds a way, and to the bonds that keep us human even in the most difficult moments. Everyone raised their glasses, and Manuela, with wisdom beyond her years, added, "And to the necklaces that guide us back home." Emotional laughter echoed through the garden as the sky gradually transformed into a starry mantle, the same sky that had inspired the star design on the necklaces that now symbolized much more than a simple accessory. Later, when most of the guests had left, Henry found his mother alone in the garden, observing the stars that began to appear in the night sky. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, sitting beside her. "How life takes curious turns," she replied, her gaze lost on the horizon. "I spent over a year on the streets, not knowing who I was, not understanding what had happened to me. But even in that darkness, something inside me refused to give up. You've always been the strongest person I know, Mother." Grandma Cecilia smiled, taking her son's hand in hers. "No, Henry, strength is not the absence of weakness. It's moving forward despite it. During that year, there were many moments when I wanted to give up, when the confusion was so great that I couldn't distinguish reality from imagination. What kept you alive then?" She touched the necklace around her neck. "This, even on days when I couldn't remember my name, I knew this necklace meant something. Someone loved me, someone was waiting for me. It was like an anchor to reality, a promise that I wasn't completely lost." Henry felt his eyes well up. "Forgive me for not believing you when you tried to warn me about Carmen. We're past that, my son. The important thing is what we've learned." She observed the sky for a moment before continuing. "You know what else impresses me? How Manuela never gave up. Even when everyone, including you, believed I was lost forever, she held on to her conviction." "She's extraordinary," Henry agreed, looking at his daughter, who was playing with the last guests on the other side of the garden. "Sometimes I wonder where such wisdom comes from." "From her mother," Grandma Cecilia replied softly. "Teresa always had that same determination, that ability to see beyond appearances." The mention of his late wife brought a melancholic smile to Henry's face. "Yes, she would be very proud of Manuela, and of you too for having found a greater purpose amidst the tragedy." Grandma Cecilia gestured towards the preparations for the foundation. "Transforming our pain into help for others is the noblest form of healing." The silence that followed was comfortable, laden with mutual understanding and the recognition that, despite all adversities, they were together again, wiser, more aware, more human. On the other side of the garden, Manuela ran towards them, her eyes shining with excitement. "Father, Grandma, come see. The first star of the night has appeared exactly over the place where the foundation will be inaugurated tomorrow." The three walked together to a point in the garden from where they could see the city's skyline. There, shining intensely over the London sky, a solitary star seemed to twinkle at them, a beacon of hope in the night sky, just as the small handmade necklace had been a beacon of hope in the darkest moments. "It's a good omen," Grandma Cecilia whispered, hugging her granddaughter's shoulders. "Our work is just beginning, but the stars are already guiding us." Henry watched his mother and daughter, the two pillars of his existence, and felt a peace he hadn't experienced in years. The storm had passed, leaving scars, certainly, but also a clarity of purpose that hadn't existed before. Tomorrow, the Cecilia Montgomery Foundation would open its doors to welcome those who, like his mother one day, wandered the streets without direction, without identity, without hope. And each of them would receive a small handmade necklace, a symbol that they were never truly alone, that there was always a way back home, even when that home still needed to be built. A year had passed since the inauguration of the Cecilia Montgomery Foundation. What began as a modest shelter near St. Paul's Cathedral Garden had become a recognized social assistance complex throughout London. The main building, completely renovated, housed clean and organized dormitories, a refectory, a medical clinic, and rooms for psychological and legal assistance. In the back, a professional training center offered courses in various areas, from crafts to computer skills. And the heart of the place, undoubtedly, was Grandma Cecilia's therapeutic garden, an exuberant space of medicinal plants, vegetables, and flowers that served both for occupational therapy and to supply the foundation's kitchen. At the entrance of the complex, a large metal plaque displayed the institution's symbol, a stylized star, inspired by the necklace that had united grandmother and granddaughter, even in the darkest moments. Below the symbol, the motto read, "There is always a way back home." On that sunny Saturday morning, the place buzzed with preparations for the first anniversary party. Volunteers hung colorful decorations, arranged tables and chairs in the central courtyard, while the aroma of the stew prepared in the communal kitchen filled the air. Grandma Cecilia, now completely recovered and radiating vitality at 73, supervised the setup of the photographic exhibition that told the foundation's story. She wore a light green linen outfit, and as always, the handmade necklace hung around her neck. Her hair, once disheveled and dull during her time on the streets, was now elegantly styled, with her grey strands shining under the morning sun. "This photo would look better a little to the left," she suggested to Roderick, a former homeless resident who now worked as the foundation's administrative assistant. "I agree, Grandma Cecilia," he replied, adjusting the frame that showed the inauguration moment, with Henry, Grandma Cecilia, and Manuela cutting the ribbon. That way Manuela's facial expression stands out better. On the other side of the courtyard, Manuela, now 11, coordinated a group of children rehearsing a dance performance for the party. The girl had grown a few inches in the last year, and her childlike features were beginning to give way to more defined pre-adolescent contours. However, what was most striking was her maturity. The experience she had lived had accelerated her emotional development, transforming her into an extraordinarily empathetic and determined young woman. "Remember, when the music changes rhythm, you form a circle," she instructed the group of children of the foundation's attendees and local residents, in an integration that was a source of pride for everyone. Henry arrived carrying boxes of materials for the workshops that would take place in the afternoon. The last year had been one of intense work and profound transformations for him. After the trauma with Carmen, he decided to reevaluate his priorities. He sold superfluous assets, including the gigantic mansion in Kensington. The family now lived in a comfortable yet more modest house in Richmond. Much of his time was dedicated to the foundation. While his businesses were managed by a trusted team, supervised by Robert, who had become his right-hand man in both commercial ventures and social projects. "Good morning, my little artistic director." He greeted his daughter, placing the boxes near the makeshift stage. "Is the rehearsal going well?" "Great, Father. The children are super excited. And I got a message from Fiona. She's on her way with the musical instruments." The mention of Fiona's name brought a special sparkle to Henry's eyes. Fiona Campbell was the new director of the Foundation's music department, a talented violinist who had abandoned a promising international career to dedicate herself to social projects. In the last 6 months, she and Henry had developed a friendship that was gradually blossoming into something deeper. "Great," he replied, trying to hide the slight blush that colored his cheeks. "I'll finish unloading the car." Manuela exchanged a knowing look with her grandmother, who observed the scene with a discreet smile. The two had long noticed the chemistry between Henry and Fiona, and silently rooted for the development of their relationship. As the morning progressed, more volunteers and guests began to arrive. Among them was Detective Inspector Jordan Miller, now a close friend of the family, who brought important news. Marlon Taylor's trial concluded yesterday, she informed Henry as they walked through the courtyard. 20 years of imprisonment, without the right to early release for the first 8 years. And Carmen, he asked, using the name by which he still referred to his ex-wife, despite knowing her true identity was different. She continues to cooperate with the investigations. Thanks to her information, we have already identified 2 more victims of similar scams in other counties. Her lawyers are trying for an additional reduction in sentence, but the Crown Prosecution Service is unyielding regarding the minimum 12 years. Henry nodded, a mixture of emotions crossing his face. You know, as incredible as it may seem, I no longer feel anger, just a deep compassion for someone who chose such a destructive path in life. That's what we call restorative justice, Jordan commented. You transformed your pain into something positive, something that benefits dozens of people every day. The detective was right. In the last year, the Cecilia Montgomery Foundation had assisted over 500 vulnerable people. Of these, 200 had already been reintegrated, with regularized documentation, adequate medical and psychological treatment, professional training, and in many cases, formal employment. The model was so successful that it was beginning to be replicated in other cities. Around noon, the courtyard was packed. In addition to the Foundation's regular attendees and volunteers, municipal authorities, representatives of other social organizations, and even some businessmen, potential supporters of the expansion project, were present. One of the most visited attractions was the craft exhibition, where the necklaces with the wooden star, now the official symbol of the foundation, were sold to raise funds. Each piece came with a small card telling the story of how a simple handmade necklace had reunited a family and inspired a movement of social transformation. When all the guests were seated, Henry went up to the stage for the opening speech. Beside him, Grandma Cecilia and Manuela watched with pride, as did Bernard, Zoe, Robert, and others who had been fundamental on the journey there. A year ago, we inaugurated this space with a seemingly simple dream, to offer a way back for those who, like my mother, found themselves lost on the streets of this city. Henry began, his voice firm despite the emotion. Today, looking at all of you, I see that we have built much more than a shelter. We have built a true community, where every person is valued, where every story matters. He paused, looking at the sea of attentive faces, but none of this would exist if it weren't for the courage and determination of a 10-year-old girl who refused to accept what everyone said was true. All eyes turned to Manuela, who blushed slightly under the attention. My daughter saw what we adults couldn't see. She followed her heart and her intuition, risking herself to find her grandmother when everyone had given up. And what guided her in that search was this. Henry held up his own necklace, identical to Grandma Cecilia's and Manuela's, a gift the girl had made for him shortly after her grandmother's rescue. A simple object, made with love, that symbolizes the unbreakable connection between people who truly love each other. Henry's words were met with emotional applause. When he stepped down from the stage, it was Manuela's turn to go up, accompanied by the group of children she had rehearsed with. We've prepared a special presentation, she announced into the microphone, her youthful voice projecting with surprising authority. A dance that symbolizes our journey, from isolation to connection, from darkness to light, from helplessness to embrace. What followed was an emotional choreography, with the children initially moving alone, in apparent confusion, then gradually finding each other, forming pairs and finally a large unified circle. In the background, Fiona and her group of music students provided the perfect accompaniment, with violins, violas, and cellos creating an atmosphere of growing hope. When the performance ended, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtyard. Grandma Cecilia hugged her granddaughter tightly, whispering words of pride in her ear. Henry joined them, forming a collective embrace that perfectly symbolized the family reconnection that had inspired it all. The party continued into the afternoon, with musical performances, emotional testimonies from people who had rebuilt their lives through the foundation, and plenty of food, music, and celebration. As the sun began to set, Henry found a moment to talk alone with Fiona in the therapeutic garden. "The children were wonderful today," she commented, her fingers distractedly caressing the basil leaves that grew in abundance. "You have an extraordinary daughter." "I certainly do," Henry agreed, observing how the golden light of dusk highlighted Fiona's delicate features. "And I've been very blessed to find extraordinary people along my path." Their gazes met, laden with meaning. After a moment of hesitation, Henry took Fiona's hand in his. "I know we're still getting to know each other, but I want you to know how important your presence has been to me. To all of us," Fiona smiled, intertwining her fingers with his. "I've also learned a lot from you all. The way you transform such a traumatic experience into something so positive, it inspires me every day." Not far away, hidden behind a rosemary bush, Manuela and Grandma Cecilia watched the scene, exchanging knowing glances. "I think our plan to get them together worked," Manuela whispered, satisfied. "Of course it did," her grandmother replied with a wink. "The stars always guide you to the right path, remember?" When night finally fell over London, everyone gathered in the courtyard for the closing of the celebrations. Paper lanterns were distributed, creating a magical atmosphere under the starry sky. Grandma Cecilia, as the family matriarch and inspiration for the project, was invited to give the final speech. She ascended the stage slowly, leaning on her carved wooden cane, another of Manuela's handmade creations. Her posture, however, radiated strength and dignity. "2 years ago, I wandered the streets of this city. Without memory, without identity, without hope," she began, her serene voice echoing in the silent courtyard. "The only bond that kept me connected to who I truly was this simple necklace." She touched the star-shaped pendant that rested on her chest. "Even when I couldn't remember my name, something inside me knew that this object meant love, meant connection, meant that I wasn't completely lost." A gentle breeze stirred the lanterns, creating a fascinating play of light and shadows. "Today, looking at all of you, I see that each person carries their own inner star, that spark that remains lit even in the darkest moments. Our job here is simply to help that light shine again." Grandma Cecilia paused, her eyes sweeping over the attentive faces. "During my time on the streets, I learned that true strength is not in never falling, but in always finding a way back. And that path is rarely solitary. It's human connections that illuminate our journey, that remind us of who we truly are." Henry and Manuela went up to the stage, positioning themselves beside Grandma Cecilia. The three united generations visually represented the message of continuity, of family resilience that was at the heart of the project. "Therefore, today we are not just celebrating 1 year of the foundation," Grandma Cecilia continued. "We celebrate the human capacity to transform pain into purpose. We celebrate the bonds that keep us connected, even in the most difficult moments. We celebrate the light that never completely fades within each of us." As she spoke, foundation staff began distributing small necklaces with the star pendant to everyone present. "Take this symbol with you," Grandma Cecilia concluded, her voice choked with emotion. "And remember, just as the stars in the sky guide lost navigators at sea, the light within you will always guide you back home, even when that home still needs to be built." A moment of reverent silence followed, before the courtyard erupted in applause. Henry hugged his mother and daughter, his eyes shining with pride and gratitude. Later, when most of the guests had left, the Montgomery family remained in the courtyard, observing the London night sky, which, despite the city's light pollution, allowed some particularly bright stars to be seen. Manuela, sitting between her grandmother and father, let out a satisfied sigh. "Who would have thought that night at the charity event would bring us here? Fate works in mysterious ways," Henry commented, his arm wrapped around his daughter's shoulders. "It wasn't just fate," Grandma Cecilia corrected, her wise gaze meeting Manuela's. "It was the courage of a girl who followed her heart, even when all the adults around her said she was wrong." Manuela smiled, touching her necklace and then those of her grandmother and father, 3 identical pendants that symbolized the extraordinary journey they had traveled together. "The stars always guide us home," she murmured, repeating the motto that had become her personal mantra. Above them, the London sky seemed to agree, with a particularly bright star twinkling as if in response. The Montgomery family had weathered the storm and emerged stronger, more united, and with a greater purpose that transcended their own problems. The necklace that once symbolized only the connection between grandmother and granddaughter now represented hope for hundreds of people, a tangible reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is always a way back. And as the night advanced over the city, the stars continued their eternal dance in the sky, silent witnesses that, when love meets courage, there is no darkness that cannot be illuminated, no distance that cannot be traveled, no broken heart that cannot be mended. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope that the journey of Grandma Cecilia, Henry and Manuela has touched your hearts. To continue being moved by equally captivating stories, we have prepared a special playlist with narratives that explore family bonds and overcoming adversity. You can find it by clicking the link on your left. If this story awakened something in you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, leave your like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Every day we bring new stories that celebrate the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of love. And remember, just as the star necklace guided Manuela to her grandmother, there is always a light at the end of the road, even on the darkest nights. We look forward to reading your comments and finding out which part of this story touched your heart the most.